Welcome to B2B No Bull.
That's right, no double speaker gibberish, no talking heads. This is a safe place to talk about what you as professionals in the space can do to look like heroes to your bosses, make sales very happy, bring success to the organization, and that bottom line. Let's get started.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to B2B No Bull. I'm Liz Brohan.
And I'm Liz's brother, Mark Brohan, and we have a good one today. We are here to cut through the hype, the dashboards, the 47 AI strategies you've been pitched this quarter.
Absolutely. Today we're talking about something I think a lot of us feel we know a little bit about, but I got to be honest, maybe we don't. It's Agentic AI and how it's being used in business and in marketing and what it actually is. And we've got an expert here today to help us through all of this. So, buckle up.
Yeah, I mean, if you've been telling your team that AI is basically just, for content creation and saving a few bucks on, cutting human writers, that is not it. Because our guest today is somebody that I have had the pleasure to know for 20 plus years. He's a well-known and well-respected name in retail technology and e-commerce technology. And we are pleased to welcome Scot Wingo, serial e-commerce troublemaker, co-founder of ChannelAdvisor, and now CEO of his own AI development company, ReFiBuy.
Excellent. Welcome, Scot.
Hey, Mark. Hey, Liz. Thanks for having me on. I'm excited to, I love the title of your pod. I've often been cited as someone that doesn't really beat around the bush or do a lot of bull. So I think it's perfect for our conversation. We'll get right to the meat of things.
You'll fit right in.
Yeah, you bet. So, Scot, just jumping off the cliff here. I mean, I've known you for many, many years, and you and I have talked technology and all kinds of things for a lot of years. And, words like game changer, going to move the needle, things, I mean, trite phrases, hyperbole like that, they come and they go, and they make me very skeptical. They make you skeptical too, I know. But having said that, Agentic AI really is for real. It really is going to impact the world of marketing and B2B marketing as we know it. And it's coming faster than I think a lot of people really, truly think. So we're here to unpack all this with the expert you. So can we start by just telling us what exactly is Agentic AI and why should marketers care about it?
Yeah. And just for listeners and viewers, I prepared a slide deck. I'm kind of a visual person, so I thought it may help people to have some slides to kind of go along. If you're on the audio side, you can just, I'll talk through the slides, but they'll be in the show notes. And then if you're watching the video, we're going to splice them in here so you can see them. So let's start at kind of the top, right? So you and I have been at this a long time, and for the longest time, we talked about Moore's Law. Do you remember that? Where this is from Intel, one of the founders of Intel, and basically compute was doubling every 18 months, right? And that's kind of like the path we've been on for the last 30 or 40 years. Now we've kind of hit a plateau. We've got enough compute for what we used to do that it's just caught up. Like there's not software enough to even take advantage of all the compute we have. And I'm talking about, remember the Intel 86 chips and then the Pentiums and remember all that kind of stuff we went through?
Sure.
Well, what's different about AI and Gen AI is it's doubling capacity and its ability to do things basically every 5 months. So we've been on this logarithmic scale that's what the 18 months is, but now we're on like an exponential scale. And that's why it's sneaking up on people pretty fast because we as humans, we just kind of like, we wake up every day, we have our 24 hours and then that's the same for years and years and years. So it's very strange to come across something that's growing so fast and it compounds. You probably remember your early finance classes or economics class about compounding. Those 5 months are compounding, right? So they're not just a doubling and then you could just multiply that out. It's an exponential. So that's just something that's kind of like wrap your head around to kind of set the table. And that's why I think it has snuck up on a lot of people because it was really born when ChatGPT launched in the fourth quarter of 2022. Now there was a lot of stuff that preceded that, but that's kind of like the big bang moment when we really had something that was like magical, where you had that first chat with it and it wasn't perfect. It had hallucinations and all that. But that was only 3 years ago, right? And now this is really starting to change consumer behavior. And we'll talk about that. But at the end point, when we talk about agentic AI, and I call it agentic commerce, what's happening is more and more people are using these technologies, both, and I'll say consumers or customers, and then more and more of them, they started kind of informational. So they were just learning from these tools, and now they're using it to do transactional stuff. And that's where it starts to impact our world. Like, I'm an e-commerce guy, more on the consumer side. I've done a bunch of B2B, and then you guys are obviously on the B2B side. So that's what's happening. Is people are starting to use it to buy things, and that's going to impact our world.
Scott, can you help me out? Can
Sure.
you start by just giving me a basic definition? And I loved that you called it Gen AI. Tell me really what it is.
Yeah, try to be specific. So AI has been around since I got a computer engineering degree in 40 years ago. But it was kind of useless. It was just like not very interesting. And it was like always a year, 10 years away. Well, it's here now. And I prefer Gen AI or large language models. So all the technology we're going to talk about is built on this newish thing that was built off of what are called general, I forget what the P is. It'll come to me, transformers. And that's what GPT is. It's an acronym for a technology that allows these computers to basically learn, quote unquote, learn. So that's the big innovation here that's happened in the last 5 years, specifically when OpenAI is the company that was started to explore these GPTs. They came out, once they got to GPT late 2s, early 3s, in a versioning, they came out with ChatGPT, and that was kind of the aha moment where people realized these things could do stuff, and they were pretty interesting. So what they do is they train them, right? So they set up a different type of computer. So in our world, when I talked about Moore's law, that's called a CPU. You've heard of CPU, central processing unit. Well, there's a graphics chip called a GPU. It used to be largely for gaming and maybe crypto, and it's really good at parallel computing. It turns out it's perfect for training these large neural networks using this GPT mechanism. So what they can do is they can give this, just like, imagine you took someone and put them in a room and gave them all the world's information theoretically, and they read it over 50 years or something, and they could recall it all. They could basically learn the basics from it. They don't have, didactic memory. You can't show them an article from the New York Times and they regenerate it, but they can remember the essence of the article, just like what we do, right? Like, I can't read an article and just generate the whole thing, but I can give you a bullets. So think of these as computer brains that run out on infrastructure in the cloud on these GPUs, and they have the world's knowledge inside of them. And that's very powerful, because now they have, in our world, I'll talk about B2B to kind of land this for people. They know everything about every product category. The fun thing about B2B is there's so many product categories, right? You've got office supplies, which is kind of like brushing up against consumer. You've got restaurant equipment. You've got industrial, and industrial has like subcategories and subcategories. Imagine this kind of computer brain that knows a little bit about all that, and that's what we're dealing with. That's kind of what these large language models have.
And I'll just sum up what I as I just get started on all of this, understand the reason it's maybe called agentic AI is because these are agents that kind of go and work on our behalf autonomously, right? They're not looking for human prompts to get them going. They're completing tasks. They're maybe even negotiating on our behalf. So am I getting kind of what they do along with the how it all got started part right?
Exactly. So what they do is they take one of these GPTs or an LLM, and then they by itself, it really can just kind of chat. It can't really do anything. It's what I would call read only, right? So you can just pull some information out, but it can't do anything. So to make it give it agency, you take the LLM, and they used to just take an LLM and give it tools. Like they would give it like APIs it could call, or a web browser it could manipulate, and that was kind of not great, because they need more guidance, and they need more focus, and they also you would have them do a task and they would forget, and then you'd have to start over. It was kind of like someone who can't have a memory. There's a movie, Memento, that comes to mind that you wouldn't have seen, but where this guy can't form memories and he has a really hard time with it. So what an agent is in today's world is it's an LLM brain married with some memory, so it can learn itself, and it can remember the task it's completed, and therefore it can put together, they call it chain of thought, where it can even say, okay, just like we would, right? To record a podcast, I'm going to have to invite a guest, have a pre-meeting, schedule a time, come up with a script, do pre-production, post. Like in our minds, we can kind of see that chain of thought, these kind of tasks we're going to have to complete. So these agents have the same thing, and they use that memory to know where they are in that chain of thought. Then they have a very specific database, typically called Retrieval Augmented Generation, RAG, R-A-G. And just think of that as, if we were going to build a B2B agent, we would want it to maybe have some extra knowledge that it goes super deep on that it couldn't find on the internet. Like, let's say I'm an industrial supply company. I'm going to want it to have really strong knowledge about my catalog, right? So I'm going to give it 8,000 pages of my catalog that it has access to. And then you give it tools. So we always have APIs in our computer world. And then a lot of these have browsers, so they can actually go just like a human would and use a browser. So that's another capability. A third one that's kind of new, and a fourth one, this will come up sometimes. We don't have to just kind of have working knowledge of it. There's a way to make APIs more friendly for LLMs called MCP. And that's another tool. Kind of think of that as just another tool, a friendlier API that an agent can use. And then Google, so this company Anthropic, who has their LLM is called Claude, they came up with this MCP thing. And then Google came up with one called A to A, which is an agent-to-agent protocol of how these things can talk to each other. But that's kind of think of that as the Lego block. So it's got memory, chain of thought, a database of whatever's relevant, super relevant you want it to think the most about, and then some tools.
We thought about getting some of those remember those little holders with like a fake face on it? You have them for parties. Yeah. We thought about getting one that's going to say Agent Scott, Agent Liz, Agent Mark, and having arrows kind of go back and forth, like all these presentations I see and these tech things that I do as a reporter. Here's my question to you. This means what to marketers? I mean, marketers are not new with anything AI. I mean, they've been using it for personalization and, chatbots for 20 plus years. But it's the first wave of this when, you talked about 2022 late when the first ChatGPT came out. Yeah, it's for content creation. Yeah, it's for personalization. It's for product recommendation. That was kind of the first wave of how marketers were using and still use these AI tools. Effective depends who you are and how you do it, all over the map. But I want you to kind of set the stage here. When it comes to agentic AI, what do marketers, B2B marketers, need to know about and care about, and how fast is it going to shake up their world?
Yeah. So it's such a general technology. There's kind of just basic two use cases. So the one use case you talked about kind of came first. It's kind of like, how can I use this internally? How can I make my organization more efficient? That's not my area of expertise, but a lot of if you have humans that are just sitting there doing something pretty rote, most chances are an agent can do that for you. So taking some data and moving it from place A to place B, and so that you're starting to see agents do pieces of that. What's really happening in my world of e-commerce, though, is these things have matured so quickly. First of all, and then I'm going to reference some of the slides. So I'll put slide 4 up here. So this is ChatGPT is growing the fastest of anything we've ever seen from a adoption of customers. They have about 800 million monthly active users. That's just for ChatGPT. Wow. And they did that in basically 30 months. So since ChatGPT launched. So just to give you an idea, it took TikTok 4 or 5 years to get there to 1 billion. Facebook, Instagram, the fastest growing things took under 10 years. ChatGPT did it in like under 3. So that's what this pace feels like. It's just like, it's not half, it's like a third. It's taking a third of the time that it used to take to do something. And what I would say to marketers is what that has done is we think there's about 1 billion people using this today. So if you take ChatGPT, and then there's other ones out there, and then ChatGPT has about 70 to 80% market share, depending on how you look at it. But there are others. So, probably the most popular one, people have heard of Perplexity. That's a really good one. And then Grok. Google's is called Gemini, so keep that in your head. What happened is the success of OpenAI started to chew away at Google's share, and they got worried and they had to react. So they've started to increasingly show more AI answers. What this has done is we used to have search engines, right? So every marketer in either consumer or B2B, the number one source of traffic typically is Google. And we typically separate Google into two vernaculars: organic, which is typically the stuff you didn't pay for. It's the free traffic from Google, often called SEO. And then there's the paid that you get from Google, which is SEM. Both of those are declining super rapidly because the way Google used to work was people would come, do a search, and then they would get 10 blue links. And then Google made money sending you off somewhere. Which is fine, but wouldn't it be better if it just gave you the answer and you didn't have to click on the 10 blue links? And today, Google's gotten so polluted that its efficacy has actually gone down because there's this arms race of SEO and SEM people putting more and more noise in there. We've all experienced this. If you go Google anything, it's taking longer and longer to kind of get to an answer. Well, the innovation OpenAI had is they added web search, and it basically gives you an answer instantaneously. So you say, hey, what does GPT stand for? And it's like, boom, generative pre-trained transformers. That's what it was. And, or you can ask, tell me a little bit about the Roman Empire, or, hey, I need to, I'm at a big company in procurement, and Bob from maintenance said, I need to get a ProScan 200 model 83. What is that, and where do I find one?
I want one.
Yeah, that's our made up B2B example. So what it's become is we've gone from search engines to answer engines, and Google had to respond to that because they were losing share. At 1 billion users is serious even for Google. They probably have like 6 billion or something, but it's growing so fast they could see the curve just like starting to really eat into them. So that's what it means for marketers. Is this is going to be your new way of getting in front of customers. So this has become something that may have some utility for you internally to an existential threat for how your customers, be they consumer or B2B, find you, discover you, and buy your products. So I think what I'm hearing on the consumer side is this went from something people were watching in the first quarter of this year to they're having board meetings about it in the third quarter of this year. And it has become very serious. Public company investors are asking companies about it and wanting to know what their strategy is. And so the good news about B2B is it kind of lags by some number of months what's going on in consumer. I think that's going to be shorter this time than it ever has been. In the e-commerce world, it took, what do you think, Mark, like 10 years for it to kind of like really wake up to the whole e-commerce thing?
Yeah, but you and I have talked about a lot of technology over the years, Scott, and we both can be skeptics. But I got to tell you, the more I talk to people for stories that I do or articles that I write, I'm hearing timeframes like this is going to be serious implementation, organizational-wide implementation for not just the marketing department, but marketing as it affects, the entire stakeholder world out there, 18 to 24 months. Now, when I hear 18 to 24 months, I usually gag and say, I don't believe it. But having said that, I have seen what this stuff can do, and I think I believe that window. But, you're the expert here. You tell us, is this going to change the world of marketing that fast in 18 to 24 months, or is that just a timeline, some consultant put together?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think by this holiday on the consumer side, somewhere around 8 to 10% of transactions will happen through this agentic commerce. And then next year, I think it'll get to be like 20, 25.
So as a marketer, how am I able to measure that? It seems to me like everything you just have told all of us, we no longer are going to anticipate SEO and SEM to be driving the traffic to our site. So can we see the agent traffic that comes to our site and those transactions that are happening? And then a second part of all that is, does this mean we're going to have to retrain our customers on how to prompt, how to interact with us, how to get what they need faster?
So the prompting, one fact that marketers will find interesting, in the search world, the customer would enter 3 to 4 terms when they were searching. And in fact, the more you entered, sometimes the worse results you got. So there's kind of like this sweet spot when you search for things to like put in 3 or 4 words. On Gen AI, they're entering 23 to 32 words. So the engines love context. So the more you can tell them, like, where I did that whole I'm in procurement, you start to get in this thing where you actually start telling it a little story, and it that really helps it present the answers to you better. So that's just one kind of little prompt fact. People will learn that themselves. We've what we've discovered is I don't think you're going to have to train customers. I think they get it, and the engines are. The Gen AI engines are very good at telling the user, could you tell me a little bit more about what you're looking? They like kind of nudge you along and kind of take you on a much more interactive journey than a search engine. So if we take the buying funnel and we kind of segment it into 3 basic things, I like to use research, find, and buy. The frustrating thing for marketers is going to be at the top of the funnel because there's going to be all this activity you no longer are going to see. Okay. So, for some SEO experts have said Google is heading to 0 click, and that's true. You do get clicks from the engines. They use citations. So if you have, if you're a B2B marketer and you have a bunch of content on your site, it's going to look different. In your analytics software, you should be able to see it coming in from ChatGPT. That's going to be your number one source. Or the Google stuff is marked Gemini. So you'll actually see, it's called the browser tag. Like what browser was the user using or the source of the traffic. You are going to start to see that. Now, it is going to, at the top of the funnel, it is going to decrease because if someone gets an answer, frequently they don't click on the citation. So instead of links, we call them citations in the AI world. So you will get typically cited, and you've seen this in the answer engines. And then many people do click on that and come downstream. So what's happened is what people are doing now is because you may not get that traffic, what they're doing is they're going out and running what they know to be common prompts that people would look for and making sure they're showing up. And this new world is called GEO, Gen AI Engine Optimization. And what you're doing there is in the SEO world, you were instrumenting your site such that it got indexed. That was step one. And then you were getting lots of backlinks because that's what the Google algorithm wanted. It wanted inbound links from authoritative sources. The Gen AI world is different. It wants more context and more reviews of your products. So what marketers are doing is they're coming up with prompts, and they can be super generic, like I have a power scan. I'm looking for something to solve a industrial grease problem with a certain widget. Whatever it is, what I do is I recommend marketers come up with some prompts that could be used on the journey to buy their products through research, finding it, and buying it. Go to ChatGPT and enter those and see if you're showing up. And that's what people are doing. There's companies out there that will automate that. That's one piece of what we do. I call that monitoring. So what you need to do is you need to kind of go from looking at analytics from inbound traffic to monitoring what's going on these engines. And if you're not showing up, there's a step of things you can do to kind of improve your chances of showing up. But that's kind of replacing engagement on the engines is going to replace clicks to your site.
Well, Liz, shall we go to lightning round?
Yeah, absolutely. I hope Scott knows about this.
I love a lightning round. Let's do it.
Well, the first question is, chatbots are agentic AI, true or false?
True.
Why?
Sure. It depends on the chatbot is like a very... chatbots are Gen AI. So most modern chatbots are driven by Gen AI. There's chatbots existed before Gen AI. So there's a set of them out there. Like LivePerson was a company in our world that had a chatbot since like 1999. That is not Gen AI. So I guess some chatbots that predate in your head have this thing like if anything was born after 2023, it's Gen AI, most likely. And if it's born before, so if you're using a chatbot technology from 2000, the year 2000 or 2020, that is most likely not Gen AI.
Okay. Another bull or no bull lightning round question. Should marketers be worried that this is going to take over their jobs?
No.
Yay, bull.
if they asterisks, they should lean into it, and they should, at their company, they should be the ninja of Gen AI, and that will make them indispensable.
Every company will have its own AI agents in 5 years.
True. Absolutely.
Okay, so bull or no bull, I think we just answered this question. It is not overly hyped.
It is not. I think having it replace humans is
good. We're glad to hear that.
Having it as your customer support engine, I'm not a big believer in that. And there's this big, and Mark's probably seen, he's probably written more ink about this than I have. Klarna is this buy now, pay later company in our consumer world. And they made all this hay by replacing all their customer service humans with agentic agents. They had to pull back because their customer satisfaction ratings tanked. So it turns out there's certain things that these agents are good at answering, like, hey, I didn't get a shipping tracking number. Where is it? So what I would call like level 3 support, like just basics, something that a $20 an hour type intern could answer. But as you get more specialized, people want the human touch. And I think in B2B, that's going to be even more specialized. B2B definitely has an angle where you want to talk to somebody, right? Because the products they're complex, often many times configurable, or they have prerequisites. Like if I get feature A, that turns off feature C, but then I also wanted feature L, but to get that, I have to turn on feature A, B, and C. So our configurable world in B2B, I think, makes it even harder for an agent, the humans, to be replaced by agents.
Well, there is a company called Pattern, which I think you're following. They play in the marketplace world, and they just did an IPO this week. They were valued going in at $1.2 billion, looking to raise $444 million. But if you look at their prospectus, which is often a really interesting read about what these companies really do, it's how their technology is explained across marketing and the B2C and B2B world is pretty eye-opening. So you have to kind of know what to look for when you kind of dig through these prospectuses, but how they're using their technology and how they think that's going to give them, this big influx of public money when the share money gets raised is really interesting. That's just one example of what happened this week.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I think what you've done, Scott, is you've given us a great starting point for understanding what's happening currently and where it's leading us. But I'm going to give everybody the heads up that we are going to do a second episode with Scott where he's going to show us some real implementation and action-oriented things that go along with Agentic AI. So I do want everybody to stay tuned, but this has been a great foundation-building conversation. We can't appreciate you enough, and we're so lucky to have people like you who are really being able to tell us at the most basic level how this is going to impact our lives and our work and our world. So thank you again, Scott. This has been great.
And before we go, though, can you tell us about your new startup and what it's going to do?
Yeah. So we basically had this idea in kind of like around the fourth quarter of last year that we could solve some pretty hard problems for retailers, very specific, not just like this is a general customer service bot. So for example, everyone in our world, be you B2B or consumer, has spent a lot of time messing around with the product catalog and adding attributes and making sure they line up with other attributes and expanding the attributes and rewording them. So we've built a team of agents to do those kinds of things. And then it turns out that that's exactly what you need as we get into this GEO idea of like, what are some of the things that you can do? You can do these things manually, but we've basically built agents that could go do them for you. That's kind of the long. So when I give you a list of things that you're going to need to do as a marketer to prepare for this, we've basically written agents to kind of help, be your guide along the way of doing all that.
So because my sister gave me the Al Pacino's autobiography for Christmas, I got to tell you, we're just getting started. So
We are just getting started, so stay tuned, everybody. You know, I want to thank Scot again. And the slides that he's presenting, again, you'll be able to find them in all the show notes, wherever you get your podcasts, and you'll also be able to find them on the episode description on our website, and that's b2bnobull.com. So thank you again, Scot. And very quickly, I'm going to thank our sponsors, The Motion Agency. They have been recently ranked as the #2 fastest growing B2B marketing communications firm in the U.S., so please check them out. And then also Embas. Embas is a marketing consulting firm that also specializes in content development and change management. So stay tuned, everybody, to learn more about Agentic, if I said that right, AI, and we'll talk to you real soon.